Hi, Bernina Jeff here. Today we're going to go through the settings and embroidery features of the 7 series, and a lot of these features are the same on the 5 series, so if you have an embroidery unit with your 5 series, these will work too. So I've had a lot of people ask me, do something on embroidery. I've got an embroidery machine, embroidery unit, and it's just sitting in the box. So this is going to help you with your settings and some basics of embroidery while you wait for your dealer to open up for classes again. So I'm going to switch the camera around. We're looking at the big screen of the 790 Plus, and we're going to show you, first off, before you even start embroidering anything, we're going to put all the settings that I like the best and show you how to do those, and then you can adjust them to your preferences. So we're going to go into the 2 gears. That's your settings, and it tells me to put the hoop back on because I was just embroidering. I'm going to pass on that. I am going to go to the menu of the 6 boxes here. I'm going to go to the middle top one. That's the embroidery menu. And now we have 3, 6, 9 different menus to deal with. These are all settings that make a difference on how you embroider. So the top left is your upper tension. The 7 series and the 5 series have a intuitive upper tension unit that works on a motor. So every stitch you take, even embroidery, changes the upper tension to some point. Now, this is a global setting, so if you set this setting plus or minus, it will remember it every time you turn the machine off and on. I do this if I'm going to be using a particular thread, like maybe a metallic thread, and I know that the tension on the metallic thread is a -1 that works with this machine, so I will set it at a -1 and then close the screen. I don't want to do that for this next demo or whatever, so I'm just going to put it back to default. Anytime there's a yellow circle around a button, just push it, it'll put it back to yellow default. It'll put it back to default. So that's how you adjust your upper tension for every time you turn the machine off and on. You can adjust it by your design too. So now we're going to go to this trail up here. I call it a cookie trail. There's the tension we were at. Oh, let me use the stylist. Brought it all the way over here. There's the tension we were at. So I'm going to touch the hoop, and that brings us back to our 9 options we have. Now the middle top is our maximum speed. So if you were doing that metallic thread and you knew that it sewed better right around 300 stitches a minute, you can put it here, and then you don't have to worry about always adjusting your slide dial. So this overrides the maximum on your slide dial, but you can still use your slide dial to go slower than 312. So I'm going to touch the center of that yellow circle, and it brings back to default. Back up to my cookie trail. Going to touch the hoop again. Now this one here has to do with version 8.1 or 8.2 software. If you have it and you program your software, the center of the hoop off center, it remembers it. I don't even mess with that one. Next one is hoop calibration. This hoop calibration is very important for new owners to calibrate their oval hoop and anything larger so the machine knows the center of the hoop. That way you can use the full extent of the hoop field. If it's not calibrated, you have the possibility of the foot or the needle sewing on the hoop. So that's not a good thing. So I always show my first owners how to calibrate the hoop. And we're going to do that here. It's very simple. There's no mystery to it. So we're going to touch the hoop calibration. It says put the hoop on. So I have a oval hoop. And the oval hoop, you always want to use the purple grid. There are 2 grids to some of these hoops. There's an orange one that goes with the older, see this is a purple color. Let me, there we go. Purple color. There is an orange one that came with the old Aurora embroidery units, like the 440 and the 640, and that will not work for calibrating these machines. The new machines need the purple one. The center hole on the orange one is off by 3/16 of an inch. So put your little clips on your grid And anatomy of the hoop, Bernina doesn't mark their hoops. So the first thing I do is I mark my hoop, what the name of it is, and I put it per inch. This is a 10-inch by 5.6 or 5.7 inch hoop. And then there's two little triangles on a hoop. Those have to match up for your grid to properly work. That inner part of the hoop can go in several ways, so you want to make sure that those two triangles match up. If they don't, you calibrate your hoop improperly. The other thing you want to do is be able to read Bernina. If you can't read Bernina, your grid's not on right. So you want to put your grid in with these clips right into those little slots. It's kind of hard one-handed. And then you want to make sure these little tabs down here, these little tabs are right on the little ledge they're supposed to be in. So now this hoop is ready to put on the machine to calibrate. And the machine's going to move it around to find the center hole in that grid. There's a hole right in the center. So I want to make sure everything's exactly right. And it's telling me on the screen that when I press the green check mark, it's going to move. So I'm going to press the green check mark. And now the screen has a series of arrows. What you want to do now is look down with the new straight needle, and I usually take the foot off, and you want to carefully rotate the needle down to see if it hits the center hole. There's a little bit of play in there, so I usually wiggle it to find its spot. So this needle is almost good, but it needs to be moved a little bit to the left. So you have to raise your needle at the proper point. It'll tell you. Excuse me, it's not COVID. So I'm going to move this. And if you have your single hole plate on, you can almost tell without bringing the needle back when you're exactly perfect, because the hole will be perfectly proportioned to the hole in the grid will be proportional to the hole on the needle plate. So that's perfect. Now I'm going to come up here, and what I did to move it is I moved one or two of those arrows, and it's counter-intuitive, so whatever way you push the arrow is going to be wrong the first time, so you just push the other arrow. Now I'm going to hit the green check mark, and I hit it too many times, so. But by hitting that green check mark, it will remember it, and you don't have to do that again until your machine gets updated, or every so often it wouldn't be a bad idea. And you need to calibrate every hoop that is the oval or larger. So if you have a maxi hoop, a midi hoop, a jumbo hoop, you need to get your grid out to calibrate that. And put those clips on the right way. I leave the clips on all the time. Now, if some of you have previously owned a 8 series and you have the giant jumbo hoop, that jumbo hoop will work on the 7 series. However, you need a grid that shows the 2 inches that the 7 series will not sew. I actually sell those grids right here in the store for people that own a jumbo hoop but not the proper grid for it. So that's something available if you need to call. The other thing I do is I went to a website on Bernina or somewhere, and I found the inch equivalents to all the Bernina metric sizes. So if you have a midi hoop, it is 165 by 265 centimeters or millimeters. I don't know what that means. I can't convert it, but I know what inches are, so it's 6.5 by 10.5. And it will tell you which machines it'll work on. So that's something that we have on a file. If you want that, give us a call. We could probably email that to you. I like to do these videos to enhance your experience with your Berninas. And you know, it's basically for the love of sewing. We have these very expensive machines, and we get frustrated because we don't know all its capabilities. So we want to be able to do everything it does. So that's why I'm doing these videos. Now the center of our menu, it looks like a snail. This is your fabric thickness. And most people don't understand when you're embroidering terry cloth or polar fleece, you need to raise the height of your presser foot. So this will allow you to change the height of the presser foot when it's sewing. The default is 4 millimeters. Most of the things you embroider on are thin, and that'll work fine. But I will use 7.5 if I'm doing terry cloth. I'll use 10 millimeters if I'm doing a layer or two of polar fleece. So that is available there for you. Now, we have a feature on the Plus series. This works on the 700, the 500, I believe, the 790 Plus, and the 880 Plus has this feature called Thread Away. It looks like a needle with going left and right arrows. You can turn it on or off. What this does is when it cuts the thread, it pulls the hoop left or right and then keeps the thread from being on top of your project. I'm not a fan of this particular feature because when I turn my project over, it is a real thready mess. I leave this feature off. It also requires longer time to embroider. But if you don't want to trim your jump threads and stuff, this is a good feature for you. Now we have a needle with a knot on it. This is our securing features. So we have a knot with a dash behind it. So that is securing at the beginning of your design, and then we have a securing at the end of your design, or vice versa. You'll have to check your green check mark, and let's do that right now. If the check mark or the question mark, and press an area, and sometimes it says no help available, so that's not going to do any good. So I pretty much leave these on all the time because I want my design to be secure. Now, when is a good point to have this turned off? Let's say you're doing edge-to-edge quilting and you want to do all 3 layers and you want to embroider on your quilt. I don't want a whole bunch of knots on the back side of my quilt showing, so I would turn this feature off, and when I embroider on my quilt, I would pull up my bottom thread and then bury it later. So that's what this particular icon is for. The next one is our cutting option. So let's touch the scissors. And the top row is, do we want the thread to cut between colors? I definitely do. So it's going to trim. I leave that on the green line. Now the second one is, every time you start sewing a new color, it'll take about 7 or 8 stitches. And if it's activated, it'll stop to have you trim the upper thread. These new 9 hooks, if you leave about 3 inches of thread, the 9 hook pulls the thread to the back of the design automatically. So Bernina has the default at off. Now, one of the best features the Plus series has is the ability to tell how far apart you want your jump stitches trimmed. You can go at very high, or I always keep it down to 1 millimeter. So if I'm doing a whole bunch of letters, like a word, and they're more than 1 millimeter apart, the machine will trim and trim that jump stitch for me instead of me going in there with a tiny little pointy scissors and trimming all those things. If any of you have ever done any amount of lettering trimming, you know what I'm talking about. So leave that to 1 millimeter. It doesn't make that much longer of embroidery time, and it sure is a good look. So now I'm going to go back to the middle of my hoop cookie trail, and now we have what looks like a measuring tape. I'm going to touch the measuring tape. This is a nice feature. If you think in millimeters, you can turn millimeters on. If you think in inches, you can turn inches on. I actually work both ways. If I'm doing very, very small, precise measurements, I know that 7 millimeters is about 1/4 inch. 2 millimeters is a little teeny amount, but I don't know what 0.1 inch means. So sometimes millimeters comes in handy. So you have the ability to flip that off and on. So there's your menu. Those are the settings that I usually tell my customers to use to start with. And then you can tweak them and perfect them as you want. So now I'm going to touch my gears. And your other settings on that page, I have another settings video that I go through individually. So I'm going to close my settings options. Now, when you're embroidering, it's real important to get the proper tension. I'm going to show you a couple tricks to make the embroidery look good for you. Now, I have one that is a lot of 7 series. You'll have the issue of the edge of your satin stitch pulling up. So you get some of that embroidery bobbin looking to the top. That means that the bobbin tension is not tight enough. Well, Bernina has a fix for that on the 7 series. I have a couple fixes for it. So, Bernina has developed a golden bobbin case. It has a higher tension than its black bobbin case. And it's okay. I don't know if anybody ever told you never to touch the large screw on your tension of your bobbin, but it's okay to do that on the golden bobbin case. If you get it so messed up, a tech can get it back to a normal sewing. But I'm going to show you how to sew out and test with using the letter H on your embroidery. So I put the letter H on, and I sewed out a bunch of different H's. This is my test hoop. So I sewed out a bunch of different H's, and they look pretty good on the top, but I want to make sure my tension is good. So I'm going to turn it around, and here's an H where the tension isn't quite tight enough on the bobbin. That was with the black bobbin. So I did one up here. This is with the golden bobbin, and it actually could be maybe a half a turn tighter on the bobbin screw, because I like to see, sorry for the wigglies, I like to see 1/3 of the top thread, which is red, then 1/3 of the bobbin thread, which is this gray-white color, and then 1/3 of the top again. So 1/3, 1/3, 1/3 is perfect tension. So perfect tension is right here on this H. I like that one right there. So what I did there is I cranked up the bobbin tension. It was too tight on the right-hand side, so I increased my upper tension from 3 on my machine to 4, and that turned out perfect. So there, the bobbin tension is too tight, and look at it, it's all over to the one side there. You want your bobbin to be in the middle of your design. What happened here is I used the 9mm plate, and then I switched to the 0mm plate, and look how different it looks on the back. So if you're having issues of the design pulling up on one side with bobbin tension, put the 1mm plate on, and when you do put the 1mm plate on, always go into the settings. You push that little plate, you have the choice of 9mm, 5.5, and 0. Punch and cut. Put the 0mm plate on there so the machine knows not to accidentally do a zigzag later. So knowing about these tensions and knowing how to fix them is going to make your embroidery life a lot easier. Every bobbin thread will require a different tension setting. There's OSD bobbin thread. Some of my customers love bottom line. I am a big fan of, especially for the 7 series, this finishing touch thread. This finishing touch thread has a special twist. It comes in white and black. Has a special twist to it, so it pulls the bobbin thread to the bottom side. You wouldn't have to spend the $100 for the golden bobbin case. You can still use your black bobbin case and use this finishing touch thread. So there's a dealer might have it. I sell them. I'm basically out of stock of them right now. I sell so many of them. So that's one way you can deal with your bobbin tension. The other thing I want to show you about is the needle. Most embroidery people will use a 7511 or an 8012 embroidery needle. I am a big fan of the Schmetz Gold embroidery, and I use the 9014. We sell 2 kinds of embroidery thread here. We sell Isocord and Floriani. Floriani has a really nice sheen to it, but it will shred real easy. So I found with this bigger diameter needle, it pushes the thread through the fabric better without it dragging, and you get a whole lot less. They're titanium coated, and they're very reasonably priced for titanium. I think it's $7 for a pack of 5 needles. And I sell 8012s or 9014s, but I recommend the 9014s because most of your embroidery thread is 40 weight, so it needs a little bit bigger shaft to go down and through your fabric, and you will find less thread breaking and shredding if you use the 9014. If you're having a lot of problems with thread breaking, give that particular needle a try. So I know I have a lot more tips to give you down the road, and keep tuned in because I will think of some more and put those on YouTube. Thank you very much. This is Bernina Jeff from High Fashion Sewing in Grand Junction, Colorado. My email is jpvlefty@aol.com. Thank you.